Good evening. Appreciate everyone's participation in tonight's webinar. My name is Richard Harrison, and I am the Executive Director of ORSANCO. With me this evening will be Jason Heath, and he'll be covering part of the presentation, and Jason is our Director of Technical Programs. It's my pleasure to welcome everyone on behalf of the ORSANCO commissioners and staff as we discuss our current 2019 Pollution Control Standards revision proposal specifically, and we'll go ahead and get started. Just a little bit about the procedures for this evening's webinar. The purpose of the webinar is to inform interested folks about proposed changes to ORSANCO's Pollution Control Standards and to answer any questions you may have about those changes. The webinar is not for the purpose of accepting comments for the record, and we have a bullet below on that, but also Jason Heath will be going through the specifics of the comment period and how you all and other folks can provide comment. So we have a presentation. I'll be providing some background on the Commission and really how we reached this point in the review, and then Mr. Heath will be providing an update specifically on the components of the proposal and a little bit more about the mechanics of the comment period. Just to let you all know, all the folks at this point are muted. We anticipate that there will not be so many folks on that we can't have a good verbal dialogue. So what we'll do after the presentation is concluded, we'll unmute everyone and then open it up for questions, and we'll work to try to answer those questions. And we do encourage your participation with this. You may also enter a question at any time using the chat box in the lower left corner. And again, just a reminder, although this will be recorded and it will be placed on our website to be informative to the public, so that if they have similar questions, they can take advantage of the dialogue. We will not be using this for comments for the record. And just the initial, we'll have more about this. The comments for the record must be submitted in writing by mail or email by April 15th. And we have just a lot of information on our website, particularly our program component under orsanco.org, and it talks about our pollution control standards in this process. In summary, the purpose of the public review is to solicit input from the public, our stakeholders, on proposed specific revisions to the pollution control standards for discharges to the Ohio River, the 2015 revision. That is the revision that is currently in effect. Just wanted to step back for a couple minutes and talk about our organization, who we are, and also who we're not. ORSANCO was formed in 1948 through the signing of a compact by the governors of our 8 member states, and it was also approved by U.S. Congress. We have our 6 main stem states, as well as New York and Virginia, that make up our compact states, and of course the federal government participates very closely with ORSANCO's program work. Our policy board, if you will, the decision makers of the organization, are comprised of 3 commissioners from each state and 3 federal commissioners appointed by the president. And again, this makes up our policy board, our decision-making board. And the compact is the formative document that really provides the authorities and the mission for ORSANCO's program work. And it's been very effective and enforced for the last 70 years or so. And our mission is focused on water quality and the control of the interstate water pollution. I want to talk a little bit about how we reached this point. In a lot of ways, this is fairly unprecedented to have a third round of review for a single update. The current review actually began some 3.5, 4 years ago, and it really started with the formation of an ad hoc committee that was put together to look at our role in water quality standards implementation. little background on that. Several years ago, ORSANCO and I guess really more particularly Ohio EPA was challenged. They had tried to include the same numeric value for temperature for a power plant discharge, and it was actually challenged to the Ohio Environmental Review Commission because it had not been formally adopted through rulemaking by Ohio EPA, and they were successful, and that really raised questions on how standards are incorporated, and so that really started the ad hoc committee's work, and really ultimately led to this more holistic review of our role in standards. And so through the ad hoc committee's continued work, they developed 5 alternatives for consideration. These alternatives really range from essentially just totally eliminating our role in pollution control standards across the board to even potentially enhancing the role. And then the committee focused on a preferred alternative that was called preferred alternative number 2 because it was alternative number 2, and it really essentially eliminated ORSANCO's pollution control standards, the criteria portion of the standards packet. And that is what was ultimately recommended to the commission to go out for public notice on. Please, the next slide, please. And so at the October 2017 commission meeting, based upon the ad hoc committee's recommendation, the commission authorized the PCS committee. The PCS committee is our pollution control standards committee, and that is the committee that facilitates the review of our pollution control standards and also can address challenges that may come up from time to time regarding the standards. And so that initiated a public review of all the alternatives, noting that preferred alternative number 2 was the majority of the commissioners' preference. And so this started what is normally a 2-step review, with the first step being kind of a broad, hey, this is what we're thinking, and here's some other items for consideration. And then through that process, we ended up having a number of comments come in, and as they're summarized there, I won't read those. And then coming through that, then the committee, CCS committee, made a recommendation to the commission to go ahead and proceed to a more formal, specific proposal that was based upon alternative number 2. This basically took care of the second public review and was the subject of that review. And through that, we received a number of comments. Probably well over 95% were opposed to the proposal. We had a public hearing. We had 2 webinars, just like we're having right now. There was a lot of input on that. So that then was considered by the Pollution Control Standards Committee. And so at our October 2018 meeting, the Pollution Control Standards Committee made a presentation, a report to the Commission, and asked for more time. Basically, had not reached a recommendation on the proposal, and so they asked the Commission for more time, and they were granted more time by the Commission. And so really, that started what ended up resulting in a completely new proposal. Alternative 2 would have essentially eliminated the PCS. The Pollution Control Standards Committee wanted to step back and take into account the numerous public comments and also try to work to reach consensus between the commissioners themselves. Although the majority of the commissioners favored alternative number 2, there were certainly commissioners that wanted to keep the standards. And so the committee really stepped back and in a lot of ways took a little different approach on this. And they came up with a recommendation to the Commission at the February Commission meeting for an entirely new proposal that would keep the pollution control standards, although they would be utilized a little differently if the proposal is successful. And they recognized that through this process, it was really important to give states flexibility for administering their programs that are mandated by the Federal Clean Water Act, protect water quality, but at the same time, making sure some of the key tenets of the PCS were maintained. And so through the work of the committee, there were a number of tenets that really came together to help guide the formation of the new proposal. And of course, any proposal should be consistent with the compact. And there are a lot of, there have been comments that imply that ORSANCO is in some way a regulatory body of the states, and that could not be further from the truth. We are a compact of our member states agreeing to work together for the common benefit of improving the interstate waters of the basin. And so we are, in a lot of ways, our member states in really every way. And so this is a collaborative effort, and so we wanted to make sure that the effort was consistent with the compact. And then also the proposal should provide for a cost-effective use of ORSANCO, but not just ORSANCO's resources, state resources, who enforce the ORSANCO standards as well as their standards, and more particularly their standards approved by EPA through the NPDES permitting process that was set up through the Clean Water Act. Also, any proposal should provide for the pollution control standards to be available for states to use as desired. Certainly, if a state sees value in utilizing the standards, we want to make sure that continues, but it shouldn't be mandated. And I mentioned earlier about the challenge with the temperature criteria. Well, there are other challenges. And so from a resource standpoint, we wanted to make sure that we optimize the use of the standard. However, also wanted to make sure that PCS were made available for future emerging contaminants of concern that may occur on the main stem of the Ohio River, since our standards only apply to the Ohio River. And then finally, any proposal should ensure that the uses identified in the compact are maintained. And so when you look at our compact and also the Clean Water Act, it essentially focuses on maintaining those core uses, whether it's making sure that a body of water is suitable for drinking water or industrial water supply, making sure it's protective of aquatic life, fish consumption, recreation, and other good uses. And that's very similar with the Clean Water Act. So this proposal really looks at the final impact of discharges on the Ohio River, and will the contaminants at the concentrations being permitted be impactful of the uses of the Ohio River. So our criteria would continue to be utilized by staff. We would continue to do our review, and we continue to look at each permit and the constituents within each permit to make sure that at that load, at that concentration, once the water is fully mixed in the Ohio River, it will not cause any major difference from had the states used our actual criteria. That is the key element of this. And again, we're focusing on this. And I guess the final thing I'll say before I turn it over to Jason is that the committee really wanted to step back and listen to the comments, incorporate those, again, reach a high level of consensus amongst the commissioners, and maintain the PCS in a form that would make sure that the uses of the river are protected and still provide needed flexibility to our member states to implement their programs. And another way to look at this is that the state and US EPA have excellent resources. They have a lot of expertise in the enforcement in the permitting process. This would allow ORSANCO to take the highlights of the standards and really focus on our science and our monitoring and really making sure that the PCS are used as a benchmark for the protection of the Ohio River water quality. And so just in summary, in essence, the new proposal would retain the PCS, would allow states flexibility to use alternative criteria, provided that the resulting permit requirements are protective of the Ohio River designated uses. So at this point, I'm pleased to turn it over to Jason Keefe to really go through kind of the essence of the proposal and some of the protocols that we include in our review process. Jason?
Good evening. I have two slides that really highlight the most significant proposed changes to the standards. I will read them for verbatim. The first section you can find on page 2, the fourth paragraph of the redlined version of the standards, and they are on our website. So, verbatim, it is recognized by the Commission that the permitting and water quality standards development processes of the individual states may vary, as contemplated by the compact, due to a number of factors, including administration of the federal and state NPDES program as established in the Federal Clean Water Act. And that kind of sets up this second part of the proposed changes, which can also be found on page 2. I think I have that incorrect, and it follows on the next page. And verbatim, it reads, it is recognized further by the Commission that each discharge permit issued pursuant to the Clean Water Act or other federal or state law may not contain requirements addressing one or more of the pollution control standards. The Commission and each signatory state have committed to implementation of discharge permit limitations that provide comparable use protection and achievement of the compact goals as provided by these standards. To that end, each signatory state will provide notice and an opportunity for comment to the Commission of any proposed or draft discharge permit to main stem of the Ohio River. And so with that, I will move on to some of the administrative aspects of this public review. We opened a 45-day public review on March 1st, and with that, the associated website and all the review material. We held an informational webinar this past Tuesday, March 12th, and then tonight is the other informational webinar. We are holding 3 public hearings. We will accept verbal comment for the official record at those hearings, and they are in Pittsburgh on April 1st from 6 to 8, Evansville on April 4th from 6 to 8, and in Cincinnati on April 8th, 6 to 8. The specific venues are also listed on the website, so please go there if you wish to attend one of those hearings. The 45-day public period will then close on April 15th. So public notification, what did we do, what did ORSANCO do to notify the public that we were opening a public comment period? We sent the public notification to approximately 200 media outlets around the basin. We sent emails to using our distribution list to over 3,300 citizens and other entities. And then we always send hard copy by regular mail to all the permitted discharges on the river to provide them notification. Again, all of that information can be found on our website. So, instructions on how to make public comment. Comments must be submitted in writing by mail or email, or again, verbally at the hearing. by April 15th, 2019. Instructions on submitting those comments are on our website, and in a nutshell, you can email us directly to the address pcs@orsanco.org. We would prefer that, but we do not wish to have attachments to those emails out of concern for our IT systems integrity. And you can send by regular mail, and our address is listed there and on the website. Again, Richard's already mentioned this. Today's comments will not be part of the official record, but as soon as this is concluded, we will open it up to, we'll unmute all the participants, and you are free to ask questions or provide comments